Hey, it's me. So this is like the third time that I'm trying to film this video because I don't know what I'm saying and I'm babbling and then I feel like it's coming across all wrong. But I'm trying to explain. Let me close the window. Jesus Christ. So I know I talked about this before in an older video, but I feel like I was kind of vague and that like unless you were trans, if you're listening to what I'm saying, if you have like no knowledge of the subject, you're probably just like, what? Or like what? Like I don't feel like I did a good job of explaining it. So what I want to talk about today is dysphoria. If you don't know what that is, basically it's feeling uncomfortable either in the way that your social interactions are going or in the way that your body is in relation to you being trans. So, for example, someone like a trans man might get dysphoria over his chest because it, like if he hasn't had like any surgery or something, he might feel dysphoric over his chest because he doesn't feel like that should be a part of his body and that he should have a flat chest instead of breasts. That's an example of like body dysphoria. An example of social dysphoria would be a trans man getting dysphoric when someone calls him she. So that's examples of dysphoria. A lot of the things that I hear from people who aren't trans and don't necessarily understand what it feels like to be trans or to experience dysphoria is kind of like the idea of like, oh, who cares what other people think, like you do you, which I think in general is a very, very valid and good mindset to have. Like, who the fuck cares what other people think? But I want to try to explain why it's not just who cares what other people think, because I think people who aren't trans many times unintentionally oversimplify it, and I just want to try to like make sense, I guess. So I think the main thing to focus on with dysphoria is that there is a disconnect, whether it's a disconnect between you and the people around you, or whether it's a disconnect between your identity and your body. There are things that just don't connect. It feels like it clashes. It feels like just not right. And I'm not quite sure how to explain the not right feeling. I mean, I'm sure there's people who aren't trans who have had feelings of such and such isn't right. The best kind of thing I can maybe think of is like someone who feels very much themselves in like a certain type of clothing, and it's not about, oh, people think I'm hot when I wear this. It's just like you look in the mirror and you're like, yeah, like this is so me, like this color is me, or this like style is me, and then you're being forced to like wear another style or another color that feels very drab. That's like it's not a great example because there isn't really anything that compares to being trans. There's not something that like, oh, I know that feeling unless you're trans. So it's hard to make comparisons, but I try to because I think that then it might be easier for people to understand, to say, oh, I can at least semi-relate, and so that makes sense, and it'll be easier for me to understand and easier to respect people and all that kind of stuff. So the other night, I had like a really bad dysphoric episode, where it was just really bad, and I was talking to my girlfriend, who is not trans, and she's still learning a lot about what it really means to be trans, and she's really good at listening to what I say and trying to understand. So I'm not throwing any shade at her at all for not knowing. It's just something that's really hard to understand unless you experience it. And one of the things that she had kind of said, essentially, was kind of like who cares what people think kind of thing. And it's very different than who cares what people think. And what I was trying to explain to her, and what I think I did a decent job of explaining, and it seemed like she kind of understood it, I said, you know, before, for the longest time, I was afraid to come out because I was afraid of what people would think. I was afraid they would think I'm a freak. They would think I'm weird. They would think I don't count, that I'm just some crazy bitch making things up. And I was like, that is me caring what other people think and making decisions off of it. I said, but when I get dysphoric socially, it's because I don't feel like I'm connecting with the people in front of me. And just to clarify, this is just my experience, but, like, I'm speaking from my own experience, but from what I hear from other people, this is very much how they feel as well. Maybe not every trans person feels this way, but it's just, hopefully, will give you a better insight and understanding. But I feel like when people don't see me for who I am, which, for clarification, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, gender neutral, agender, whatever. I don't feel like a man and I don't feel like a woman. So when people look at me and they talk to me and call me a man or call me a woman, there's a disconnect, and it feels like I feel almost like I'm standing outside watching them talk to me, like I'm not actually interacting with them. I'm not actually creating a connection. I'm not actually creating a bond. I feel as though I'm playing a role, or I feel like I'm not connecting with the person. And it's like the best way that I can describe it. And I mean, I think everyone, even if you're not trans, probably has been there where you feel like you don't connect with people, but it's not like, it's like everywhere I go, you know, it's thrown in my face that people don't see who I am. And it's very draining and very exhausting, and people will see, you know, oh, this person's non-binary, or this person's whatever, but many times I think people will still categorize me as a woman or as a man, and just say, oh, well, that's like a gender neutral man, or that's an androgynous woman, or like whatever, and like that's literally not it. Like, I'm literally not a man or a woman, but people still classify me as such, and it feels like I'm walking through this world and there's this disconnect. There's a huge disconnect between me and the people in it, and that's what causes the dysphoria. I don't feel like I'm being seen by the people around me, and it makes me really sad. And it's not like, I don't know, it's really hard to feel like you're being erased all the time and not being seen for who you are. So that's that on social dysphoria. And the next dysphoria is body dysphoria. And the way I feel with that, that's also a very hard thing to explain. In a very generalized term, it feels like it's not enough. Like, when I look at my body in the mirror, there are definitely, I definitely have had a progress where there are parts of me that I see, a decent amount of me that I can see if I look at myself naked in the mirror, that I can see and be like, wow, that's me. I feel like, for the most part, my face feels like me, and my hair feels like me, and my skin is like me, and stuff like that. and even like my body shape for the most part, like I look at it and I'm like, yes, like that is me, but there's still parts of me that I am not very connected to. And so, like, if I were to close my eyes right now, which I'm not gonna, but if I were to close my eyes right now and say, like think of, I don't know if this is, like, kind of cheesy or whatever, but if I were to close my eyes and someone said, Bryn, picture your soul, so I'm picturing, like, a little light thingy, I don't know, and they said, and, like, put it in a body that represents you, it would not be the body that I have right now. Or they said, put yourself in a human body that represents you. Still, it wouldn't be the body that I have right now. It would have some of the qualities, but not all of it. Or all of them. And that's where the disconnect is. And the nice thing about my disconnect is that I don't normally get body dysphoria unless I'm naked or being touched in certain spots. Whereas, like, some people can walk around and, like, just know that certain body parts are there and feel extremely dysphoric, and it just, like, doesn't go away. For me, I'm typically okay until I see it or I touch it. Like, those parts. But the bad thing is that it makes things like sex really difficult. And I was trying to explain this to my girlfriend too, because I have a really hard time explaining it, and I like it is there's a disconnect between me and her, and like, because I can't be me, you know. And so for me personally, I haven't talked about, like, how sex feels with other trans people very much, so maybe this isn't super common. I would imagine that it is, but I could be wrong. With me, if there's, like, 3 settings of, like, this makes me feel like shit, this makes me feel okay, or this makes me feel great, let's just say there's those 3 settings, then I need neutral or above, or I don't have a good time. And in the 2 different categories, there's physically and emotionally. So, if I have a part of my body that someone touches it and it feels great physically, because, you know, there's nerves or whatever, but it makes me feel like shit emotionally, then I won't enjoy it. If there's something, you know, there's things that, well, okay, yeah, if there's something, like, that makes me feel really good emotionally when they touch it, but it, like, hurts or something, then I won't enjoy it. But there's never a time where something physically feels good and emotionally feels good. Or there's very rarely ever a time. Because most of the things that physically feel good don't emotionally make me feel good. So I'm either neutral or like shit. And most of the time, something emotionally feels good, because my body isn't placed correctly, there's not the right nerves or not the right whatever, and I just feel like neutral, or like, I mean, there's not really many times where physically I feel like shit, so probably just neutral, but there's never a time where I can feel good in both areas, and that is extremely fucking frustrating. And, you know, there's time, like, I could sit here and close my eyes and picture, like, how would you want your body to look and to have sex, and, like, imagining that, like, both of those things are good, and they, like, come together, and it's, like, good, and amazing, and everything just clicks and connects and everything goes smoothly. But right now it's like the best I can do is have something feel good physically and then feel neutral emotionally, or feel good emotionally and feel neutral physically. And it's really frustrating. And then, so that's where my dysphoria comes into play during sex. But then also on top of that, something that's really frustrating is many times when this happens where, I mean, everyone wants to have good sex, unless you're asexual or you don't like sex or whatever. But if you're having sex, you probably want to have good sex. And what ends up happening is, in my head, like I said, I can close my eyes and I can imagine whatever, and I feel really good. And then the reality hits me that, no, that's not how it works, because your body is not like that. It's not made like that. And then the disconnect happens, and then all this, like, shame rushes in, and I hate that, like, even just saying that word makes me feel like absolute shit. But it just, like, it rushes in, and then it becomes a whole, like I get very angry at myself, or very disappointed in myself. Like, why can't I just enjoy sex? Why can't I have a good time? Why is doing things that are supposed to feel good making me feel bad? Why? And, like, it turns into this very, like, if I would just be better, then this wouldn't be an issue. But this isn't something I can control. But it's something that my brain is convinced that I can. Like, I can just suck it up and have a good time and end up enjoying myself. And I can somewhat, but I can't, like, I've never reached that level of satisfaction where they're both up here. The physical and the emotional at the top. Like, it just hasn't happened. But I know that it can if I'm able to get surgery and stuff like that. And that's the best way that I know how to explain it. And, like, that's my experience. Maybe other people, there's different things that play into it. I'm not really sure. But for me, that's where all this dysphoria comes in, is that, I don't know, it's almost like, let me think of an analogy. It's kind of like, actually, I was explaining this to my girlfriend in relation to something else, but it fits for this. If you fucking love pepperoni pizza, okay, and you are, like, so hyped for this all day, and you're like, oh my god, I can't wait to get this pepperoni pizza, and then you go to the pizza shop, and then you're like, can I have a large pepperoni pizza? And they tell you, I'm sorry, all our pepperonis, like, got moldy, so we don't have pepperonis today, but I can make you a cheese pizza. Most people probably would be like, well, they'd probably just go to another pizza shop, but, you know, if there's not one around, like, they'd probably, okay, like, cheese is fine. That's kind of how it feels. Like, either it feels like shit, or it's like, okay, that's fine. But it's like, I wanted the fucking pepperoni pizza, and now I have to settle for cheese. Like, that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of, for me, a lot of the times what sex feels like is like, I can never get the pepperoni pizza, ever, until I fucking pay $1 bajillion to get fucking surgery. Like, that, but it's not something, like, I mean, I like, it's more complicated than pepperoni pizza, and it's more important than pepperoni pizza, but, like, I mean, just imagine your favorite food, whatever that is, and you can never have it, and you can daydream about it and think that you're gonna get it, and then you get, like, the off-brand version, and it's not fucking good, or not that it's not good, because, like, I don't want to make it sound like sex is bad, or that I'm, like, hating it, because, like I said, there can be, like, good physically and neutral emotionally, or good emotionally and neutral physically, and overall that's still a good experience, but there's this level of experience that I'm missing because I can't connect in both ways at the same time. And that's where it's, like, so fucking frustrating. And for me, that's where the most body dysphoria comes into play, because like I said, it's mostly when I see certain body parts or touch certain body parts, and most of the time I'm wearing clothes, and most of the time I'm not randomly touching myself, so it mostly only happens during sex. And I don't know, that's my experience, and I wanted to share it, and hopefully that makes kind of a little bit of sense. If you are trans and have dysphoria and would like to add things in the comments, or you know, explain if yours is different or if yours is the same, like, feel free, go ahead. I don't want, like, I like to get information out there and help people be aware, especially people who don't understand what it means to be trans. Like, I love to educate people, but I also don't want people to see my video and be like, well, that's just how all trans people are ever, because there's like a bazillion trans people in the world, and I am one of them. So, you know, everyone's dysphoria is different, but I do think that I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel either the exact same way as me, or there's a lot of overlap, and it can at least maybe give you a generalized idea of what it feels like to be trans or whatever. But that's my experience, and I'm gonna be done babbling because I'm done babbling. So have a nice day. Bye.